on social, or really since, we're talking to a content marketing group, for your content. We want to consider decreasing how much we do, or depending on our audience, having the regular cadence. Same with demand gen. We can decrease it, or we can do what we regularly do, because we're really in a stage of, we just have a new patterns, but we're sort of in sync with them. The third stage is sort of this notion of the new normal. And as we all talk about the pandemic, maybe this new normal's in the fall, maybe it doesn't hit until Q1 next year, who knows? But in that new normal, there'll be sort of a new business model. And one of the things I want to emphasize here is this is really the mindset of the people that view our social, our customers, et cetera. And so when we think about the new normal, we really want to think about how has this crisis impacted our customers and their business model? And then how does that ripple through into how we reach and engage them on social? I really want to emphasize this, right? Now, in this new world, new business model for our customers, clearly the content may be different, how we think about things may be different. Our retail clients are now online, so maybe now we're coming at them a different way. But we should, in this new normal, be able to get to whatever we were doing before, so some regular frequency and sort of regular demand gen. Okay, so this is sort of a structure to think about it. The other comment I'd make on this is when we're in this crisis, we may move into stage 2 and feel like we're in a new pattern, but some news hits, there's some other big change, and we may flip back into stage 1. Am I safe again? So we need to still be fairly flexible in how we think about things. Okay, so I'm going to roll forward. Now, as I said before, the thing to have in your mind is what stage are my customers in? Okay, many B2C companies, they aren't safe. This is an existential threat to their business. Okay, and that means if we serve restaurant companies as our clients or our airlines, we're giving them critical updates, but we're not promoting to them. We're not tweeting out fun stuff to them. They're in a crisis. Okay, now for many of our B2B technology companies, they're really in or moving to stage 2. And we tend to serve SaaS tech companies. They're moving into stage 2. So much of how I'm going to talk about it today really reflects that. But I really want to emphasize this is about what stage your clients are in. And the stages can easily flip back to stage 1, depending on sort of, the latest news. Now, generally speaking, I think all of us will understand this. In many ways, this is just common sense, but I just want to list it out here. A lot of people are thinking about their content, but when we talk about social, it's really the graphics in the headlines, okay? That we want to be careful about. Obviously, any graphic now, 2 people shaking hands, we all understand that doesn't make sense, okay? So it's really about being sensitive and the graphics and headlines in particular. Obviously, all of you are content marketers, so you're also thinking about the underlying content itself. Be simple, be straightforward, be supportive, okay? We don't need to be clever in this time. We don't, just really be straight up. It's okay to highlight what, if anything, you guys are doing, your companies are doing, your clients are doing that you're supporting on social with content or doing to help. Okay, and obviously don't want to be too promotional. So it should be in really good faith that we're highlighting what we're doing to help. And there's sort of a shift, we're talking about B2B here. So I always want to raise a flag around demand gen. So we want to be thinking and slanting much more towards sort of brand, thought leadership, and educational content. Again, not being too promotional. Okay, and I was talking to a client a couple of weeks ago about this. This was, I made a mistake when we first got into this because my playbook for clients is if there is some crisis out there, don't put it into your brand feed. Okay, we don't want trolls. We don't want to get pulled into anything around politics or crisis. But the pandemic is different because it impacts everyone. So I started to understand this crisis is different, and that if we don't acknowledge it, it's like we're living in a different world. It doesn't make any sense. And literally on every client call I've been on, there is some comment about how are you doing and what's going on in the different region you're on. So this is different. It's okay. Now, here's something else I would say that sometimes is not intuitive. So I want to highlight this. Don't, for a brand, this is separate than from a person, but for your brand, your clients, if you're, do not hashtag coronavirus. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of digital marketers out there and consumer brands that are cutting back on digital advertising spend. You know why? They don't want their ads showing up on some article that's talking about global death count, right? So we don't want our social posts to end up in a search around coronavirus, around global death counts either. All right, or some political thing, okay? That doesn't mean you can't have coronavirus in your post, but I would not recommend hashtagging it. The other thing is there's so much noise about it, it's really not gonna tie back in and really have a good impact with your target audience. The larger theme in all of this, and again, we know this, okay, I'm just making it explicit, is it's about empathy and community building. I had another call with a client where there was sort of discussion around, do we have to be serious? Can we be a little more fun still? And I said, look, it's really about empathy. That's our central sort of thematic coming through this. It is really about opportunities to build community. Okay, so this should all be very, very clear, but this should be front and center on how we think about things. Now, there's a very easy test to this, which is, if you go look at your social feed and it basically looks like your social feed from Q4, you got a problem. Okay, it'll look like you're on autopilot. It'll look like you're, you've gone back in the past in some ways. It isn't reflecting what we just talked about. Okay, so we don't want the social feed to look like it did 3 months ago. Now, I want to show you an example of this. So one of the things, as Dennis knows, is, we do a lot of social research around different buyer personas. And one of the buyer personas we do for clients is open source developers. So, one of our, a couple of our clients sell into the developer groups. So what we do is we build a panel, and in this case, it's 650 open source developers. And we literally will go look at all the tweets that exact panel did over a period of time. So this reflects the hashtags that they were using the most, engaging with the most on Twitter in Q4. No surprise, open source, DevOps, Red Hat, KubeCon, so you see events, Cybertruck, good old, all of these sort of things. Okay, now here's what the hashtags they were using in Q1. There it is, okay? They're engaging around all of this around coronavirus, okay? So this chart does not look anything the same way as Q4 because it's really reflecting what's going on now. And that's how we want to think about our social feeds too, okay? Our social feed should not look like they do in Q4. Okay, and by the way, to give you a little frame of reference, in Q4, we analyzed about 85,000 tweets. And in Q1, it's about a little over 100,000. So there was actually a lift in the social activity between Q4 and Q1 with this highly technical open source developers. The other thing is we're seeing it across the C-suite. Okay, we're seeing this same sort of Q4, Q1 look with CTO, CIO, CIOs, across the board. Okay, so folks are still very active on social, but this is how the feed sort of looks today. Now let's think about how you can change your feed. Let's think about how you can do social. So one of the key things is, as we talked about before, you can highlight what you're doing to help. And here's some examples, offering training, for free, setting up a sort of response fund. Creating, you see MailChimp there, creating a coronavirus sort of hub of content and what to do for small businesses. Okay, a DigitalOcean to help for, around on content. Again, all of us are doing these things. Now, even if the company you work for or your client isn't necessarily doing something directly for good, okay, the clients of your company are. So you can amplify the effort. So one of the things we are looking to do is amplify the efforts of our customers and partners and show what they're doing. So this is one key area. Another is, and a number of folks are doing this, is acknowledging the current situation. Okay, we absolutely should be starting to create within our content roadmap, content about what everyone is going through. Whether it's the treasure data one here, acknowledging now working from home, and a lot of people are now learning how to work from home, or our client Zora starting to put it together research on how this is impacting SaaS businesses, okay, or our client Influx Data on developers staying at home, or our client A10, okay. They're all sort of embracing the current situation and then providing a lens on it that's related to what they do, but not in a super promotional way. Okay, so we definitely want to be thinking about this. Really, the theme around empathy and building community is make it about others. So simple stuff, like you'll see our client Lean Data here, you know, us retweeting and thanking them about something they're doing around donating around a virus response fund. Okay, and even Slack, who is not our client, but I thought it was a good example, understanding a lot of people are looking for work. So having a post out there now and framing their job openings in that context. Okay, or our client Blue Jeans, just, you know, retweeting and thanking for people and showing within the thread that we're looking, we're watching, we're sharing, and we're building community. So how do we take all of this and start to turn it into some sort of action plan? A lot of this is going to seem the same as what, you know, we talked about, because it's the same thematics, right? Understand what stage is your client in, and obviously if you're not sure, then default to, you know, being a little less frequent, a little less demand gen, okay? But it's really about where your customers are is sort of the stage to think about, or your audience. Review the content roadmap, you know, and if you've got, you know, weekly, monthly social calendar like we do, you know, to make sure it's not tone deaf, as I said before, be careful around the graphics, be careful about the headlines. There, you know, we've had a couple interactions with clients, you know, we really, for example, poo-pooed a few clients doing, you know, April Fool's jokes and fun stuff. It just felt a little bit tone deaf. We had one that wanted to do a Throwback Thursday post where it was people at the beach. We're like, no, we're trying to get people off of the beach. Let's not do a throwback to go to the beach, right? So just, you know, be thinking about this stuff, and, you know, explicitly built into the social roadmaps and the content roadmaps, you know, content that acknowledges the current environment, content that looks for opportunities to shine a light on customers, partners, and what employees are doing around this. And again, larger theme, build community, show empathy. Now, one key aspect for a lot of folks is, well, what do we do on the demand gen and the paid media side? Okay, should we move forward with it? Is it okay? So let's talk about that for a second. So yes, you can continue to do social ads. One of the qualifiers I want to keep coming back to is, if you feel like your audience, your clients are in stage one, then I would not do this now. For us, most of our clients, because of who we serve, are in stage two. So yes to social ads. But again, same theme, don't be tone deaf. Look at the graphics, look at the copy. Okay, okay. And really shift toward brand building, thought leadership, educational offers. In many cases, if we're going to ramp up a new campaign, we're recommending to folks, instead of going full bore in, you know, in April or beginning of May, let's ramp the campaign up slower. Gives us a moment to monitor comments, to see if you know, we're getting comments that reflect we should give it another moment, or we should change our ads. And even when we think tactically about what button do we put on those ads, you know, we're really recommending clients, hey, you know, let's not do that download now. Let's instead do learn more. Okay, let's emphasize the educational aspect of things versus making it feel a little bit too promotional. So let me give you a little context on sort of what we Leadtail as a B2B social agency are seeing. We've just been going over the March numbers, and to give you a frame of reference, you know, we've got about 15 specific clients that are sort of tech SaaS. And one of the things that's really surprised me in looking at the March numbers is the numbers have not gone off a cliff. okay? By and large, if I didn't know there was a global pandemic going on with our customer set, I would not have been able to know that from the numbers. Okay, and any drop I've seen in March, whether that's reaching new customer, reach and impressions or engagement, it's very easy for me to go, well, we didn't do any of the physical events we had planned in March, right? Or we were shying away from doing too many fun employee advocacy oriented things in March. But by and large, we have not seen the numbers go off a cliff. So generally speaking, if you feel your clients are in stage 2, given everything we talked about, you know, I would recommend continuing to do the sort of regular posting like we talked about for stage 2, and roll those social ads out and keep moving. Now, obviously, as we talked about before, this could change at any time. And obviously in the B2B tech sector, we are not being impacted as much as other agency folks that I've talked to that sell into B2C, where they literally, you know, are losing clients left and right, and it's a very different scenario. So I go back to think about what stage your customers are at, and then sort of engage with that accordingly. But from our standpoint, you know, we're seeing the social numbers still hold up, and we're seeing the social numbers still hold up, sort of, you know, so far in April. So with that, I will open it up for any questions or other thoughts, or again, given the context of this meetup, and let me quickly say I was a founding member with Dennis, or I was at the first meetup.
That's right.
You know, feel free to also share what you observe. Feel free to also share whatever advice and thoughts you have, because I'm simply starting our discussion.
Yes, so feel free to speak up and present your question to Carter, or use the chat for that. There is one from Pushpa, Carter.
Yeah, if you want to moderate.
Yes. Do you see I think you might have covered this, but maybe I'll just pose the question. Do you see an increase or decrease in social media content? I think Pushpa was asking about organic posts on social media.
Organic and ads too, but yes, I'm more interested in organic, and then especially for B2B companies. So one is individually, maybe people have more time to be on social media. That's maybe one of the reasons. And then do you see increase or decrease in content produced by companies on social media?
Yeah, by and large, for the companies we serve, B2B tech companies, they are definitely talking about what we talked about, revisiting their content roadmap. But in many ways, I've been surprised at how much it's all systems go. I had seen, I mean, truthfully, the biggest hiccup I saw is really going, oh crap, we can't do our offline events. Let's start to launch virtual events. Okay, so I have not seen any real meaningful decrease. The other thing I would highlight is the social insights I went over with, you know, the developer open source community, where the amount of tweets in the panel of 650 folks we looked at increased in Q1 over Q4. So Q4 was about 85,000 tweets of activity, and Q1 it was over 100,000. Okay, so we have not seen it go off a cliff, number one. And number two, for the type of technology oriented folks we serve, we've really seen the content sort of stay level. And you could argue it's gone up a little bit because everyone's now figuring out how to do these online events.
Yeah. So do you also see the engagement proportional to the content?
Yes, we have not seen, generally speaking, in engagement go off a cliff. I would say, depending on the platforms like LinkedIn, we've seen a slight decrease on LinkedIn, but I believe that's more attributed to one of the things that drives a lot of engagement on LinkedIn, of course, are pictures from folks at on-site events, yep. Right? And so that clearly has been cut back. And the shots of folks on Zoom calls do well, but they don't do as well as the physical events because of how much folks engage on social around industry events.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
And I've been a little surprised by it. I really have been a little bit surprised by it. But to your point, I'm doing the same as everyone else. I'm on social more, and I'm, you know, because I'm home. So for
yeah.
sure, some of that. I don't want to just keep watching a news feed, seeing something depressing. So I'm going, oh, okay, well, maybe now I'll have time to watch that webinar I normally wouldn't, or to read a PDF or download something, or to tweet out a little more actively. So I definitely believe there's a little bit of an escapism, or I have a moment to sort of hone my craft a little bit.
Thanks, Carter.
Yes.
Hey, Carter, we're close to 12:30. Are you able to stay on for a little bit longer in case folks have more questions?
Okay. Yeah, so, absolutely.
Hey, Carter. Good afternoon. This is Cecile. So great to hear your voice. Hey, I have a quick questions about also how companies are mitigating sort of layoff or things that are popping up. I think we saw last week Yelp, which was like on all social media channels. So how do you mitigate sort of setbacks for a brand in the current context?
Now, do you mean specifically how do you manage social around that? Or?
Yes, if they lay off, so either, employees reacting on social media or, just mitigating from a brand perspective because you don't have any other choice than, doing some cuttings.
Yeah, so let me answer the question this way. So typically, meaning, in times other than these, one of the playbook items would be when a client tells us they're letting folks go to monitor social. And sometimes there may be an individual in person we want to keep an eye out for and watch their handles because of however they were let go or the situation. A number of our clients have done RIFs, okay, furlough, layoffs, whatever. But because of the environment we're in, I'm seeing very little activity around the layoffs other than the media talking about it because everyone so understands what's going on. Okay, now with that said, we still always, when a client tells us they've done a RIF or a furlough, we always say, hey, we will monitor the handles a little bit more. We'll see, and we typically ask, were there any people in particular we should keep a look in the handle, et cetera. But a lot of it is really understood in this particular environment. So I would say monitor, but I'm seeing a lot less of the sort of stuff that we sometimes see when folks are laid off. Does that make sense?
Yep.
This is Johannes. Thank you for your presentation. This is really interesting. Absolutely. Any thoughts, let's say, I don't know, go in the future, a month, 2 months, and we're returning slowly back to normal, all that brand building and all that sort of education and relationship building that went on, how do you foresee leveraging that going forward?
Okay, so let me talk as a content marketer, because I am part of the content marketing meetup. I really think that every one of us on the call should start to be thinking about building anchor thought leadership around the new normal. So for example, we've got machine learning and AI clients that are targeting supply chain, and I am mentioning to them loud and clear, now is the time to talk about what will supply chain look like in the new normal and how can technology help. Okay, so thinking about your customers, your audience, and that's where we talked about before, when we talk about the new normal, it is how is this impacting your customer's business model? And how can you create content that helps them figure out how to navigate the new normal given the changes to their business model? Okay, there's a real opportunity here. I suspect as early as mid-May, we're going to start to see a lot around the phrase new normal. Just like over the last few weeks, we've seen a lot around working from home, remote work, right? It's going to start to flip. The biggest indication I see to that is because on the news, we're starting to see a lot of the discussions around when do we open up again? Okay, so this notion of the new normal is one that I would really start thinking about specific to the customers. I would take it further than that. There's an opportunity for each of us to start to establish ourselves as thought leaders around the new normal, individually in our brand. And I always say, we don't have the answers yet, but we can be the ones that are starting to pose the questions, starting to put out hypotheses and ask for feedback on those. We do a lot of influencer work. And one of the things I always say with influencers is a lot of them have built their influence by being the ones that ask the question versus have the answer. Okay, so I really think we need to be getting our head around what does new normal mean? And if stage one of us getting our head around that is, what questions should we be asking and posing? And then how do we create content around those questions? As Dennis knows, I love making content about other people. So there's a great thought leadership piece that can very well be us reaching out, us being anyone on this call, reaching out to our customers, reaching out to influencers and starting to get their thoughts on what the new normal is, and then packaging it into our content. Does that make sense? Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, it's very helpful. In fact, your last argument is a good one. I've done sort of informal surveys. In fact, talked to pretty much everybody I can get my hands on, just to get a sense of how they're thinking about things. And it seems like if you have some ideas on how to leverage social for that kind of survey or opinion gathering work.
Dennis is a great one to talk to about that. Dennis does a great job on reaching out to people and saying, putting together a content piece, you know, interested in your thoughts on this topic. Or as you know, Dennis does a lot of Twitter polls. So I am a big fan of just watching Dennis's feed.
Were you asking Johannes how to use social to generate survey responses? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. I mean, if you have any experience in the current climate, you know, do people reject it? Is it something that they're open to? Because I'm like I said, I'm doing it sort of onesie-twosie with my own network, clients and so forth. But it seems like this could be elevated.
Well, I think I mean, Carter was so kind with the compliment, but I haven't had too much success on generating like survey completions for research projects from social, because I think the survey, like a Twitter poll is easy because it's one click, but filling out a survey usually takes a little bit more of someone's time.
Okay.
I don't have an easy answer on how to use social right now. I would say, based on the theme of Carter's talk, that it might not be the best time to solicit survey responses on social, unless it's like, I see some brands that are doing research in their industry about how the industry companies are affected by COVID-19. That's like pretty on the, could be considered proper. But if it's for like your some thought leadership piece and you're trying to get a survey completion, it feels to me like it might not be the right time right now, even though you might be required to do that project.
Yeah, and I will tell you from what we're seeing, because we don't do surveys by and large. We do a lot of outreach to influencers and executives to target accounts, even now. And as Dennis knows, we do a lot around generating Q&A blog posts and interviewing someone for a blog post, okay? We're very successful on that and very successful now in this environment, okay? So it's less about a survey, because to Dennis's point, a lot of people are distracted. I suspect on this call alone and the attendees here, if you were putting together a piece on what content marketers thought was the new normal, of this group that's on the call, I'd be surprised if you don't get 7, 8, 9 quotes that you could throw into a blog post. Okay? And then have a headline called "Content Marketing in the New Normal," right? And then own that for SEO. But I will stop there.
I'm looking at the list right now. Someone do it. Someone reach out and put this post together. I will contribute.
There we go. See? There you go. All right, cool. What else?
Don't be shy. Or if you'd rather put the question in the chat, I'll read it to Carter. All right, I'll ask you a question, Carter. So you're CEO of Leadtail. How are you guys thinking, Leadtail that is, on your own social presence these days? Well, not for your clients, but for yourselves.
Yes, we really are, as much as possible. And really, the thematics that we think about are being highlighted by this period. But as Dennis and some of the other folks on the call that know us know, that these are thematics that are just part of our culture, which is, you know, make the story and showcase other people, shine the light on other people, okay? Build community, all of the, share other people's content, make other people look good. It is really central to how we do social and how we talk to our clients. And it's really interesting. I'll sort of share something else. Typically, we're brought into a client, and our typical client has anywhere between 100 to 1,000 employees, raised about 50 million in venture capital. Okay, these are our typical clients, and we're normally brought in when a client is shifting from product marketing to brand marketing. And that can tend to be a crunchy shift because product marketing, almost by definition, is talking about yourself, talking about your product features, trying to pull everything into your vantage point on why your product or solution is better. Where brand marketing is moving into thought leadership, the experience of a product, you know, all of these sort of things. And the more we can shift and think like brand marketers, and the reason is because all of our clients are just so much more educated now before they truly talk to a salesperson that I suggest that brand marketing is more important than ever. The only thing I say is brand doesn't necessarily mean it's positive sentiment. So I like to talk about advocacy. How can I make someone else look good and build my brand that way? Okay, then I get the brand awareness and I get very positive sentiment. So we really try to manage our social around the things that we talked about on this call, but it's pretty central to us saying, how can we make it about someone else and how can we build community? Any other comments that other folks have or want to share? Because again, this shouldn't be just directed to me. I want to make sure that other folks can share what they're finding and what they're seeing. And it's all good if someone disagrees with me. As Tom knows from Treasure Data, I love a good argument. So, you know, feel free to jump in with what you're seeing and observing.
So I'll jump in, Carter.
Yep.
Thanks for doing this today. Good to see you.
Absolutely, Todd.
Well, I'm seeing your name. I'm not actually seeing you.
You don't want to see me. I'm a feral guy. So
yeah, I know. We're all working from home. So a big part of your message was be empathetic.
Yes.
And honestly, I think that's kind of what content marketers have been saying all along is be empathetic, listen to what your customer needs, and be helpful. A lot of brands might actually be learning this for the first time these days. Do you think that, and maybe somebody else wants to jump in on the answer, do you think that brands are kind of realizing this, that talking about themselves isn't working? Do you think this would be a long-term lesson that they'll continue moving forward? Or do you think after about 6 months, 3 months, 6 months, they'll revert back to what they were always doing?
I think, and again, I'd love to get some other feedback from marketers on this. I think that they're still pushing their own products way too much. I think that they'll revert back, but they haven't moved, this hasn't moved the dial with them that much in thinking about it. And I'm on conversations with, you know, 4 or 5 clients every single day. You know, they're really this how to make it about someone else and empathy. It's just very hard for them to do, you know? So, yeah, so I'm not seeing this shift happen as much as you know, as one would think. And I'm actually trying to come at it from, you know, a different way too, to say, hey, look, empathy is the new trust. Okay. So, I think they're struggling with this, and it's not the same as them buying into thought leadership. I think they moved from how do we go from shilling our product to being thought leaders, but even then, I think a lot of them think about thought leaders as making them look good and elevating their brand versus really truly being empathetic and compassionate about how others are suffering or how to truly authentically support the customers we serve. That's my opinion, though. I'd love to hear some others.
So I would agree, and I think the issue is that there is so much focus on executing and then immediately measuring. And when you look at things like empathy and even thought leadership, there's a longer term play there before you start to see results. And I think that a lot of companies, a lot of people just don't have the patience to wait for those results to pay off.
Well, here's the irony in that. So I totally agree with that. I believe that those B2B brands, that small group, that handful of the majority that do it, are going to come out of the other side of this as the winners. Okay, so I really believe this empathy thing is a great strategic tactic to sort of move through this, just like the early adopters around thought leadership and inbound. So I definitely think there's an opportunity here, but to your comment and to my perspective, you know, there's an opportunity because the majority are not going to grab at this the way they should.
Agreed.
Any other thoughts? It's a great comment, great thing to think about.
Well, it's kind of like not building your network until you're out of a job and you just start networking.
Todd, you know me, right? I'm all about presenting opportunities versus asking for favors, right? You know, yes. And so that is, you know, one of my things in talking to folks is, look, empathy is the new trust, right? You know, so how do we build trust here? It's by being empathetic. But I think, yeah, it's going to be a struggle. They're not going to, you know, by and large, they're not going to move the dial, is my opinion. So any other thoughts? Dennis, what's your opinion on this?
I think speaking of empathy, I put myself in the shoes of some of these marketing directors who are in the very quandary right now. And I think they're struggling because they had goals, their demand gen or pipeline goals coming into at the beginning of this year. And suddenly February, March, probably more in March, the world changed, but the numbers might not have changed. Like their boss might still be holding them to those goals or maybe slightly reduced. So they're scrambling to say, like, how am I going to hit those goals? And content marketing is a long-term play. Like, that's not going to result in revenue for Q3. So it's kind of like, I think part of what we're seeing that we don't like is the result of people under undue stress to still hit the goals that were established before the pandemic.
Dennis,
So,
I'll take it further than that. So let me surprise everybody. Okay, many of our clients are hitting their goals now, and the registrations and webinars are doing great. And they're doing the email blast 1 hour before the online event, and it's blowing up, and people are staying on the webinar. Okay, so I don't know if they're learning that they need to change behavior is another way to say it.
got it. Okay. By the way, if anyone on this call, I still see a good number of people left. If you're hiring or if you're looking for freelancers to help supplement your business, feel free to speak up or put your name in the chat. I am hearing about some people that have unfortunately lost their jobs looking for work. So if we can support each other, that would be great. Any other thoughts or questions for Carter? I'm looking to see who's still on to see if I'm going to call on anyone.
There are a couple questions in chat. I don't know if they've been addressed.
Let's see. All right, Carter, here's a question for you. How do different cultures impact this? This is from Carla. Since social media marketing is global, does that have an impact?
The truth is I don't know outside of North America. The vast majority of our clients are really serving this market. I would hazard a guess that in other markets there may be an increased sensitivity to this stuff than the sort of highly capitalistic American market than we are. But as I said, you know, I would think about what stage your clients or your audience are in and sort of act accordingly. There's an argument that, you know, some of the European countries are going to be sort of opening up earlier than we are. So they actually may in certain situations be ahead of us. But I always say my North Star is, you know, how is something impacting our customers? What do our customers care about? What is their view of the world? And that is always my starting point.
And Carter, while we wait any final questions, where can folks find you or Leadtail if they want to follow up with you?
Yeah, just go to leadtail.com and always feel free to do the contact hello at Leadtail. If you have a question, if you want to have a separate conversation, I'm chatting with lots of people these days around a lot of the issues we talked about. And as you can tell, I'm highly opinionated. I like to say I'm opinionated but not religious, meaning take my advice or don't, it's all good. I just care about helping.
So Carter, we have a question from Carol. She says she's working for NPR in her local community behind the curve regarding social media. Where would you suggest I start? And is there a book you would recommend?
What do you think, Dennis? What's your thought on this? This is actually a good sort of broader question.
I guess, Carol Ann, if I can clarify, it sounds like you're working behind the scenes, you're helping support local NPR affiliate, and you want to know where like, how do you get started? I would, so if that's the question, yes, correct. Okay. I would, sorry, another chat came in. I would do a lot of immersion in who is the current audience for NPR. So understand what NPR, like what is the programming? I'm not sure if this is like a radio affiliate or something else, but like understand who the audience is, like, and just don't do anything on social until you immerse yourself a little bit. Let's see, what book? I'm struggling to think of any single book. I would actually say, instead of going to a book just yet, I don't want to downplay books because books are great. I would go to some of the go to Leadtail, go to some of the social platforms because they have great content on their blog. So I'll just throw out there Sprout Social, Hootsuite, Buffer. Those are social media tools, and they have great content both on their blog and in downloadable ebooks. And that's the definition of thought leadership. They're telling you, or not telling you, they're showing you how to do social media marketing without really pitching their product. Carter, how about, what's your take?
No, I would absolutely agree with that. I think that's a really good starting point. And I, in particular, like that you highlighted, first understand your audience and how they engage, because the audiences are very different.
Okay.
And yeah, Carol asked Leadtail. Yeah, you spelled it right, Carol. That's Leadtail. Just go to leadtail.com. That's Carter's agency.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and Dennis, feel free, if anyone reaches out to you, to provide my email address too.
Okay.
I'm absolutely happy to chat. It's, you know, it's what I do. It's my way of giving back to the community.
All right, I suppose we still have 10 minutes if anyone wants to chime in. Otherwise, I'll just wait for 10 seconds or so for any final speaker uppers.
Oh, yeah, sure. With regards to that NPR question,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you've got the advantages. There's probably 50 or more other NPR locales across the country. And some of them are probably in the same situation you are. Some probably aren't even asking that question yet, but others are probably killing it and doing a really good job. So I would take a look at other NPR locales. And the other thing is just look at your local community and see. I mean, there's a lot of hashtags around local events. Well, not events these days, but local groups, local organizations, and see what they're doing and try to enter their conversation. Listen first, and then kind of join into their conversations. So that's the two things I would do: look local, and then look at other sister organizations across the country.
Thanks, Todd. Any comments from Athar? So we have a regular on our Zoom, Athar, and I believe, Athar, you are in Mumbai, India. So welcome from afar.
I'm in Mumbai. It's late night over here. And as rightly said by Carter, I manage a social media account for one pharma company.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing a surge in the engagements and the community with our social media pages overall. And I presume maybe because people are at home and they would like to see pages rather than watch on the news. So that's what my observation is.
And then did you have any perspective on the question around culture and how this is sort of impacting other cultures? It sounds like you're talking about India a little bit there. Any other perspective?
Over here, no, there's nothing from a culture point of view.
So we have a question from John. I'll just throw this out to the entire audience. So John's asking if anyone has their 2 cents on Steakum. Steakum is obviously their food brand, but apparently I saw someone showed me their Twitter feed. Apparently there's this extended thread on the science behind COVID-19, and so they're taking a stance to provide scientific information, I believe is what I saw. Anyone else see that?
Mm-mm.
So if you look him up on Twitter, you should be able to find this thread. I think largely it's been getting raves is what as far as sentiment, I think it's skewing towards positive as far as I can tell. Have you seen it, Carter?
Yeah, I briefly saw it. Yeah. And I would agree with that. And this is all part of the, thing we talked about, which is how are you helping as a brand? And this is definitely a strategy they've taken, and being sort of true to it is the secret to being successful.
All right, I feel like we are starting to wane a bit. Maybe we're getting ready for our afternoon naps. I'll put out one last call. And Carter, thank you so much for joining us, Carter. You're getting a lot of raves in the chat.
All right. Appreciate it.
And then now
Yeah, and that thing, the Steakum example, that's a dicey thing to get into because it's so hard to trust information you read online. So I give him credit for jumping into that fray.
Right. And it's hard because anything you state on the current situation, unless you're like the CDC or Mr. Fauci, it's like, is it really scientifically correct? And at the same time, it's very, I do give them credit as well, but it's also a big it does stray far away from their brand. Like you wouldn't associate a food brand with commentary on the current science.
Yeah, so I haven't read it, but I would hope that they sourced the crap out of it, in the copy.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's with a situation like this, it's probable or possible that what you state as a scientific fact could be proved wrong a week from now. And Dan, I love how you have yourself as your Zoom background.
Well, it's actually a photoshopped picture of myself with Jack White.
Whoa.
Oh, okay. Nice. All right. Well, again, Carter, thank you so much for joining us today. And for everyone else, we have tons of more meetups coming. So you go back to our meetup page. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Thanks again, everyone. Appreciate it.
You.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Carter.